Welcome to English Vertex Podcast.
Improve your vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation with our engaging lessons.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Vertex Podcast. I'm so happy you're here with us today.
Hey there! Great to see you all again. It's another perfect day to make your English sound a little more natural, right?
Absolutely. You know, Daniel, I was chatting with a student this week, and she asked me something that so many learners ask.
Oh yeah? What was it this time?
She said, Emily, what's the difference between can, could, must, and should? I use them, but I'm never really sure if I'm using the right one. Honestly, that question comes up all the time. Modal verbs seem small and simple, but they actually carry a lot of meaning. Permission, ability, advice, obligation, possibility. Exactly. And today, that's our topic. We're going to break down modal verbs in the simplest way possible.
No confusing grammar charts, no long lists of exceptions, just clear explanations and real examples you can use in daily conversation.
By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly when to use can, could, must, and should, how strong each one sounds, and how to avoid the mistakes that make learners sound too formal or even a little rude by accident. And once you understand the strength behind each modal verb, everything clicks. It's less about memorizing rules and more about feeling the tone of each word. We'll explain exactly what that means in a moment, but first, we want you involved. While you're listening, think about which modal verb you use the most in your own life. Yeah, write it down in the comments. Tell us, I use blank the most because we read every comment and it genuinely helps us plan future episodes. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to English Vertex Podcast. It really helps more learners like you find these lessons.
All right, let's stop waiting and get into it. Grab a notebook if you can, get comfortable, and let's explore modal verbs together.
So Daniel, let's start with the basics. Modal verbs are special helping verbs that change the meaning of the main verb. They don't change form for he, she, or it, and they're always followed by the base verb.
Right. No S, no ing, no to. Just the modal verb plus the base verb. She can swim, not she cans swim or she can to swim.
Let's begin with can. The formula is simple. Subject plus can plus base verb. We use it for ability, general permission, and everyday possibility.
For example, I can speak 2 languages. Daniel can fix almost anything. Can I open the window?
Let me add a few from my own life. I can cook pasta pretty well.
My brother can drive a motorcycle. We can meet tomorrow if you're free. Those are great natural examples. For the negative, we just add not or use the contraction can't. I can't swim. She can't come today. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Could is actually the past form of can, but we use it in 3 very different ways.
First, past ability. When I was younger, I could run 5 miles easily. Second, polite requests. Could you help me for a second? Third, possibility. It could rain later.
Do you see the difference in tone already? Can you help me is fine between friends, but could you help me sounds softer and more polite.
That's such an important point, everyone. Could isn't just the past of can. In conversation, it's often about politeness, not time.
Can you think of a situation where you'd use could instead of can, just to sound more polite? Say a sentence out loud right now. Great practice. Now let's move to must. The formula stays the same. Subject plus must plus base verb. We use must for strong obligation, rules, and things that are necessary, often when the speaker feels strongly about it. For example, you must wear a seatbelt in the car. Employees must wash their hands before returning to work. I must call my mom back. I completely forgot. Notice that must often feels personal or official, like a rule or a strong internal feeling. It's different from a softer suggestion.
And here's a small but very useful detail. The negative, must not or mustn't, doesn't mean no obligation. It means something is forbidden. You mustn't smoke here means it's not allowed at all.
That trips up a lot of learners. If you want to say something isn't necessary, you actually use don't have to, not mustn't. We'll come back to that difference a little later.
So to summarize this section, can gives us ability and everyday permission. Could softens requests and shows past ability or possibility. And must expresses strong obligation or rules.
Great summary. 2 more modal verbs to go, but the pattern keeps getting easier, I promise.
Now that we understand can, could, and must, let's connect that to something we use constantly in daily conversation, should, and how it compares to must.
Let's start with should. The formula is subject plus should plus base verb. We use should for advice, recommendations, and gentle suggestions.
Should is much softer than must. It doesn't sound like a rule. It sounds like a friendly opinion.
For example, you should drink more water. Daniel should really get more sleep. We should probably leave soon. Traffic gets bad after 6. Here's a real-life comparison for you. Imagine a doctor speaking to a patient. You must take this medication twice a day sounds like a strict medical order. But you should try to eat more vegetables sounds like friendly advice. That difference in tone matters so much. Must feels like there's no choice. Should feels like there's still a choice, but it's a good idea to listen. Let's try a little dialogue to show that. Speaker 1. I have a headache again. Speaker 2. You should really see a doctor about that. Perfect natural example. Now, let's compare formal and informal usage of should. In formal writing, you might see applicants should submit their documents by Friday. In casual speech, it's more like, you should really check that out, it's amazing.
First tip here, should is great for giving advice without sounding bossy. Second tip, shouldn't works the same way, but for advice against something. You shouldn't skip breakfast. Third tip, should can also express expectation, not just advice. The package should arrive tomorrow means we expect it to arrive, not a suggestion at all.
That third meaning surprises a lot of learners. Should isn't only for advice. It can also express what we reasonably expect to happen.
Now, let's directly compare must and should, since learners mix these up constantly. You must finish this report today. Sounds like a strict deadline, maybe from a boss. You should finish this report today. Sounds like friendly encouragement, maybe from a coworker.
Please write your own sentence using should for advice and one using must for a strict rule. Put both in the comments below. It really helps you remember the difference.
Let's do a quick review. Should gives gentle advice, recommendations, and expectations. Must gives strong obligation, official rules, and things that feel necessary without much choice involved. Now let's move into an extremely useful real-life comparison that trips up almost every English learner. Must versus have to. That's a great one to dig into. On the surface, they seem identical. I must go and I have to go both talk about obligation, but they actually feel different in real conversation.
Here's the key difference. Must usually expresses a personal feeling of obligation, something the speaker decides is necessary. Have to usually expresses an external rule, something someone else requires. For example, I must call my sister. I miss her so much. Feels personal, an obligation I feel inside myself. I have to work on Saturday feels external. My job schedule requires it, not my personal choice. Here's a really practical, everyday scenario. Imagine you're at the airport. passengers have to show their passport sounds like an official airport rule. I must remember my passport next time. Sounds like a personal reminder to yourself.
In spoken everyday American and British English, have to is actually used far more often than must. Must can sound quite formal, even a little strong in casual conversation. That's such a useful tip for sounding natural. If you're not sure which one to use, have to is usually the safer, more natural sounding choice in daily speech.
Now let's talk about politeness and tone, because that's where must, have to, and should really show their personality.
If a friend says you must try this restaurant, that's not a rule at all. It's actually enthusiastic encouragement. The word must becomes almost like excitement, not obligation.
That's a wonderful example because it shows modal verbs shift meaning depending on tone and context, not just grammar rules.
Let's practice this together. Try saying, you must see this movie with excitement in your voice, like you're recommending something you loved.
Now compare that to saying, you must submit this form by Friday in a serious, official tone. Same word, completely different feeling.
Do you notice how your voice naturally changes the meaning? That's such an important part of speaking English confidently, not just knowing the grammar.
One more quick practical situation. At work, a manager might say, you have to complete this training by Monday, an external company requirement. But a coworker might say, you should really take that training. It's actually useful. Friendly personal advice.
Please try writing one sentence with have to, describing something required by school, work, or life, and share it in the comments. It helps you remember the real difference.
One more thing worth mentioning, since we're already comparing tone. In writing, especially emails, should often sounds much more professional than must, even when you're being quite direct.
That's true. The report should be submitted by end of day sounds like standard professional wording. The report must be submitted by end of day sounds urgent, maybe even a little stressed.
So when you're not sure which one fits, ask yourself, am I stating a firm requirement or giving reasonable guidance? That question alone solves most of the confusion. So let's review this whole section. Must often expresses personal obligation or strong feeling. Have to usually expresses external rules and requirements. And should softens everything into friendly advice or expectation.
Beautifully summarized. Now, let's talk about something we all do, even after years of teaching English, making modal verb mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. Just last week, I caught myself saying, I must to finish this today, and immediately thought, wait, that's wrong?
That's actually a perfect example of mistake number 1. Modal verbs never take to before the base verb. It's must finish, not must to finish. It's can help, not can to help.
The only exception is have to, which does use to, because technically have to isn't a true modal verb. It just behaves like one in meaning.
Mistake number 2, adding s for he, she, or it. Learners often say she can speak French, but that's incorrect. Modal verbs never change form. It's simply she can speak French.
Right. No matter who the subject is, I, you, he, she, we, or they, the modal verb stays exactly the same.
Mistake number 3, confusing mustn't with don't have to. Someone might say, you mustn't come to the party if you don't want to, thinking it means it's optional.
But actually, mustn't means it's forbidden, not optional. The correct sentence should be, you don't have to come to the party if you don't want to. That means it's simply not required.
That mix-up can honestly cause real confusion in conversation, so it's worth practicing carefully.
Mistake number 4, using must too often in casual speech, which can accidentally sound too strong or even a little bossy, when should or have to would sound much more natural.
I remember a student once told her friend, "You must call me tonight," meaning it as a friendly request, but it actually sounded like a demand. A softer choice, like, "Could you call me tonight?" would have sounded much friendlier.
That one always makes me smile a little, honestly, because the grammar was correct, but the tone completely changed the message.
Why do these mistakes happen? Mostly because learners translate modal verbs directly from their first language, where the grammar rules or the tone might work very differently. A better approach is to practice thinking about strength and tone, not just grammar. Ask yourself, is this a strong rule, a personal feeling, friendly advice, or just a possibility? Please don't feel embarrassed if you've made any of these mistakes before. Every single English learner does, and honestly, native speakers mix up formality sometimes too. Try this practice. Write one sentence describing a modal verb mistake you used to make and how you'd correct it now. Share it with us in the comments below.
Mistakes really are proof that you're actually using the language and trying, and that's something worth being proud of. So remember, everyone, mistakes are completely normal, and honestly, noticing them is one of the fastest ways to actually improve.
All right, now it's time for some interactive practice. I'm going to read 2 sentences, and you choose which one sounds more natural. Try answering out loud before Daniel gives the answer. Sounds fun. Let's start. Situation 1. You must to finish your homework, or you must finish your homework. The second one, of course, since modal verbs never take to before the base verb.
Situation 2. A friend asks for help politely. Can you help me with this? Or could you help me with this?
Both are correct, honestly, but could sounds a little more polite, especially with someone you don't know very well.
Situation 3. You mustn't worry about the deadline. It's flexible. Or you don't have to worry about the deadline. It's flexible.
The second one is correct because we're saying it's not required, not that it's forbidden.
Situation 4. Giving gentle advice to a friend. You have to see a doctor, or you should see a doctor.
The second one usually sounds friendlier and softer, more like caring advice than a strict command.
Situation 5. An official airport announcement. Passengers should show their boarding pass, or passengers must show their boarding pass.
The second one, definitely, since it's an official, required rule, not just a friendly suggestion.
And here's a fun variation. All of these sentences can shift in feeling depending on your tone of voice. Try saying, "You should really try this." Once like calm advice, and once with real excitement, like a strong recommendation. That's such a great point about natural speech. Now, here's your challenge. Create your own sentence using can, could, must, or should, and say it out loud, even if nobody's listening.
Speaking out loud, even alone, genuinely builds real confidence. It trains your mouth and brain to work together naturally, not just on paper.
And remember, real conversation isn't about choosing the technically perfect modal verb every single time. Exactly. It's about communicating your intention clearly, whether that's a rule, a suggestion, or a polite request. Wow, we covered so much today. Can, could, must, should, have to, tone, politeness, and some great practice too.
Let's do a quick recap of the 3 main things you should remember. First, can and could express ability, permission, and polite requests, with could sounding softer.
Second, must and have to express obligation, but must often feels personal, while have to feels like an external rule, and should always sounds friendlier and more like advice.
Third, tone of voice can completely change how strong a modal verb sounds, so don't just focus on the grammar. Focus on the feeling behind your words, too.
You've already taken a huge step just by listening to this entire episode. That shows real dedication to improving your English.
Here's something to think about before we go.
Which modal verb do you think you've been using incorrectly? And which one do you want to practice more this week?
Let us know in the comments. And please, don't forget to like this episode, share it with a friend who's learning English, and subscribe to English Vertex Podcast.
Your support genuinely helps us keep creating these free lessons for learners all around the world. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and be proud of every small step forward.
We believe in you, and we're always here to help you on this journey. Take care of yourselves, keep learning, and see you next time.